I am amazed at how much work and how long it took for me to get one of these goddamn systems. I mean, really, it doesn't look like a whole lot. And actually, it looks kind of, well, gutted. But there's a reason to that. But before I get to that, let me at least explain what this is. This is the IBM PS2 Model 95. So, almost 10 years ago now, I first saw one of these systems and I thought, gee, this would be a cool system to own. Because back then I thought, well, okay, it looks really cool. And it has that beautiful display on the front. I had several of these systems come into my interest, and they all passed by. For some strange, weird reason, they would always, at the last freaking moment, end up being involved in some sort of horrible disaster. One system was left out in the rain. Another one fell off a loading dock. Another one was almost mine, but it ended up going to someone else I know. And then there was one particular guy who didn't particularly like me saying, here, take all the money in my PayPal. I swear to God, I've been wanting one of these for a while. Say that, oh, you know what, you're nickel and diming me, so I'm going to take this system and throw it out. What a dick. Anyways, behind all that is this system. Got it on eBay. Thought I was lucky because it only cost me $120 before $80 of shipping. That $80 of shipping was from Florida to here in British Columbia. So the other side of the continent. This system looked a lot nicer on eBay. But if you're going to box something, whatever you do, do not try and pad a computer with anti-static bags. No, I don't say put them in the bags. Don't ball them up and put them in the box. This system arrived pretty beat up. In fact, it's currently all spread out here. The front and back are in really, really bad shape. It might be recoverable. We'll work on that. May need some epoxy, may need some acetone. But everything else just been pulled apart for cleaning. There was foam decay going on around the fan, but that scraped off, and oddly, it wasn't sticky. It was just crumbly, so it just kind of fell off in blocks, but that cleaned up easy enough. And now I'm just going to go through some final cleaning before we start installing actual hardware. Unfortunately, it only came with one drive. That means only one set of sleds, so one hard drive can be fit in here. I don't have bezels for CD. I don't have rails for CD. I only have one sled for the 3.5-inch floppy. Technically, I have a second one, but I don't really see any reason for 2 floppy drives in this machine. Excuse me. When I got it, 3 of these 8 slots were fitted with the regular Spock SCSI card, the XGA1 video card. So if you like seizure-fighting Japanese robots, this is the video card for you. A token ring card, and, oh, I'm sorry, actually 4 cards. There was also this X.21 communications card that was in here as well. I didn't really need any of those except for the SCSI card, so they're all out right now. The CPU is also removed right now as well. It's this large connector here. And then hidden behind the power supply was one of my biggest fears. On the auction, it showed a memory error, so either the memory controllers died, or there was something else. Well, there was no RAM. Okay, I can work with that. Thankfully, this doesn't incorporate one of those stupid Dallas RTC chips. This instead uses conventional CR2032 coin cell battery for the real-time clock. So that at least makes me happy, as opposed to, say, the Model 70, which needs that stupid giant lithium battery, which costs $20. Moving on. One thing I've learned about the Model 95 is that unless you have a real reason to get one, you can be okay with the Model 70 or the Model 80 or even one of the 46SX systems that were available. I think it was the 56. I don't remember completely, but stick with one of those instead. If you're getting a Model 95, you better understand that you're going to be starting to invest some money here, because usually they're about $250 to $300 on eBay before shipping. So again, got kind of crazy lucky on here. And the only reasons people pay that much is because it has that many 32-bit micro-channel slots, supports that much 72-pin RAM, and of course, can handle some pretty fast 46 upgrades, or even a Pentium upgrade, which is pretty nice. Now, like I said, you need to have a real reason to have one of these in order to, well, buy one. And I'm going to upgrade the living snot out of this machine. Right up to the teeth. I got some pretty conventional hardware, and then I have some really special hardware. And here, let's go and describe in depth what we're going to do. Because I don't have any bezels for this particular system, we'll be using an external CD-ROM drive. This IBM manufactured one is a caddy loading device. Cost me $10. This is the caddy here. And it's an IBM manufactured drive as seen by the blue buttons. On the back of it, we do have an HD50 SCSI connector, plus we have 25-pin for parallel port. Alongside the introduction of the PS2 line, especially the Model 95, is the 2.88 megabyte floppy disk drive. It looks like any conventional floppy drive. Electrically, it's identical, uses the same controller, uses ED density floppy diskettes, and will take place of the 1.44 megabyte drive. Traditionally, the Model 95 used a SCSI interface for all of its disks. This is the Busmaster 32-bit controller by default included with every system, nicknamed Spock. The back connector here is the proprietary IBM connector that was used for external devices. On the other side of the card here are two 30-pin connectors that added memory for caching up for the controller. We're going to add 2 megabytes here. The connector in the middle here is for internal devices. Speaking of SCSI, I actually have the disk right here that came out of the system. Make close note of the metal rail here, because this is the rail that I'm missing for the rest of the drives. I have several of these drives already, so they're really nothing special, and if this one dies, I can just replace it if I want. For networking, we'll be using IBM's EtherStreamer MC32 card. As a matter of fact, this card is very brand new. Actually, I believe it's brand new when I got it. So, yeah, never been used. And inside, along with all the nice little bits of documentation, there is also the reference diskette. So, I'm not going to have any problems trying to find a driver or anything to set this particular card up. Microchannel sound cards can be pretty hard to come by, but I do have one. This one in particular has a crystal chipset for it, as well as inputs for CD and input and outputs on the rear. This card came from an RS6000 machine I own, but I thought was willing to sacrifice it since there's very little you can do with audio in AIX. For the hell of it, I'll also be sticking into the system here a GPIB or IEEE 488 interface. It's usually used on items like HP test gear or medical equipment or lab equipment altogether. It includes also an option for a security dongle to fit in here. I really don't think I'll ever need it, but I guess we'll have it in there anyways. Even newer than the EtherStreamer is this Bokeh board. This microchannel card adds an extra serial port and an extra parallel port to your system. At the time, I thought this was kind of a joke because, well, it's a PS2. Why do you need more of either, or this at all? Well, what if you own a tablet, or what if you own a modem? The Model 95 only has one serial port, so this card here will help me use both at the same time. Before we get to the last part here, I want to show off the old CPU complex. This one here featured the 25 MHz 46SX CPU. Over here, this IBM branded chip is actually the Intel Overdrive 46DX2 50 MHz. This over here is just your basic logic for the rest of the system. This is your BIOS. It's nothing really all that special. The upgrade from the Type 2 CPU complex to the Type 3 CPU complex is quite amazing. As you can see here, it's two boards. There's also a very large chip count of SLT chips, as well as a couple of ceramics. Under the heatsink is the 50 MHz Intel DX2.
As a matter of fact, the reason we have this second board is because of this 256 kilobytes of L2 cache that is here. The cache controller simply cannot run any longer trace lengths between the CPU, the controller, and the chips. We will be able to upgrade this even more with this Kingston Turbo chip, which is an AM5X86 133 MHz CPU. Depending on how the clock multiplier is set, we could run it even faster. Now, to finish off with the video, first let's look back. This is the XGA-1 video card as supplied by IBM. It's a full-length card. This one here supplied very minimal video rates and resolutions. It's also loaded with half its required VRAM. On the other end, we do have an HD15 port, so you can attach a VGA monitor. The resolutions and refresh made this card infamously bad. Our replacement in this case remains to be XGA, and this is actually XGA2. There's several major improvements. The first thing is you now have a full complement of VRAM by default, a new DAC, and you have 2D acceleration. This is a 32-bit bus-mastered video card as well, and the video refresh rates are now significantly improved for less eye strain. Finally, we add the fun part. This here is where you add your 3D graphics. Now, this is only a part of it. You can already see there's a fair amount of logic going on. There's almost no space left on this board. But yeah, like I said, this is only one board. There's still more boards to this. As a matter of fact, it's not one board. It's, well, two boards. Take a look at this. No, wait, actually, no. It's 4 boards. This is 4 boards. It's enormous. This is amazing. This is the Iris Vision. This is made by Silicon Graphics. Over here we have our HD15 in from the XGA, and we have a 3-pin connector out to your monitor. There is a lot going on here. Yes, I do have that special cable for the monitor. Not only that, I also have the documentation for it. Actually, I have both volumes of documentation for this thing, as well as lots and lots of drivers and software. Well, except for the drivers and utilities for OS2. Amazingly also, I do own the graphics subset this is based off of in the Personal Iris 4D20.
This is the reason why I wanted that Model 95. It had gone from, oh, I want the system, to, I want to be able to downsize this machine to 2 cards, and then be able to use it with stuff like AutoCAD. Now that's pretty cool. Anyways, if you are going to get yourself a copy of AutoCAD, especially if you're going to be using it with DOS or Windows 3.1, and especially with a 486, I strongly recommend something like AutoCAD Release 12. It can be available through used and second-hand locations. Just don't download it, because that's illegal and that gets you in jail, right? Anyways, Model 95 is going to be an interesting project for me to work on for the rest of the winter. And I don't think I'll do a follow-up video. But the only thing I really do need is a decent looking monitor. I do have a P201 that's a 21-inch, but it's got a different bezel style. I'm aware they made it with the classic PS2 style bezel and border around it. I'd love to find one of those. Anyways, hope you enjoyed.